Yeah, it's an incredible story too. And like so many guys, my father didn't want to share it. He's so humble and also was so traumatized by war. And what he went through, guys, is so incredible. He was a teenager in Warsaw, Poland, saw the Nazis invading his country and decided to stay and fight voluntarily as a freedom fighter. Escaped through sewers, then he was seriously injured, thrown into a massive POW camp. And then at 90 pounds and 6 feet tall, think about this, one of the more healthy guys, he escaped. And then he was in the woods for a few days, saw a plane come by, and it turned out to be an American plane. And my father literally ran 15 miles to a riverbed and saw young American GIs hugging him, telling him he was finally free. Just an incredible story and a great story of what it means, I think, on this Veterans Day to be an American.
Yeah, sure does.
Wow. And Rita, you know what? I was reading about your dad's story today in the book that you read. He was so grateful for the American soldiers who saved his life. He moved to the U.S. He starts a family here. But you almost never knew his story. Talk about that a little bit.
You know what? He didn't want to share this story, and he was ready to sort of move on. It was so traumatic for him. And what happened, as you mentioned, I'm an investigative journalist, and yet I was going through these personal items that were left in a storage locker. I found this red and white bloody fighting Polish armband, and then I found this. And this just made me weep. This is my dad's actual prisoner of war tag. And then I found a card with code names on it, and there was a card that said, Ryszard Kozabucki, prisoner of war. And that's when I realized that my father had been held captive by the Nazis. I reached out to my dad after years of separation. He left the family when I was a teenager, and it started what has really been the most incredible just time in my life to be able to hear this story from my father firsthand, and not just be able to honor him, but all veterans by this story.
It really is an inspirational story. And Rita, you actually went back to Europe with your father, and you documented that journey. Describe that for us.
It was so emotional. And here's my father, who's always been so stoic. He broke down in tears. We went to a camp that was similar to the one he was in. Look, he stayed in barracks just like this, so stark. And the last time my father had been in Poland was almost 65 years to the day. The last time he was there, he was on death's door. He was held at gunpoint by the Nazis, shoved onto a boxcar, taken to a POW camp, starving, almost dying at that point. And when he came back, to see a country, now Poland, vibrant, now it's free, now it's democratic, and also to see monuments everywhere he went, like this one that you're seeing, these tire tracks here, symbolized a location where many of his friends died in a massive tank explosion. My father was crying at certain moments, just thinking about the friends he lost in war, and then also so happy that this country honored him and his comrades so much. And he hopes, again, by sharing this story, the reason he came forward, as emotional as you can see it was for him, and so much for me as a daughter to see him, to see how traumatized he was, not sharing this story for decades. He also was so happy to finally share this story, to be able to honor, his great Polish resistance comrades, such courageous people in history, and also, again, the American troops who saved him and told him he was finally free.
And Rita, this is Clark. You also helped your dad get some long overdue medals or awards, is that right, before he passed away?
I did. My father just passed away a few months ago, so this is very fresh. But my father had never been recognized for his service because all he cared about at that point back then in the middle of the war, here is in the Warsaw Uprising, Clark, and at that point all he wanted to do was get through and survive and make sure that his buddies survived. And then as I was doing research for the book, I discovered that he had been nominated for one of the greatest honors. It's sort of the equivalent of the American Silver Star. And on his deathbed in the hospital, he received the Fighter's Cross. He received also a big promotion, which is a lot, you can imagine, from a corporal to an officer. And at the end of his life, something called the Polonia Restituta, one of the greatest honors, something Omar Bradley, Dwight Eisenhower, and now my father received.